Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So as you can see by the title, this is a demo and review of the Jaclyn Hill in collaboration with Morphe Cosmetics eyeshadow palette. Later on, I will get into why I'm doing this video, but I figured the easiest way to do this would be to give you, the basic information, price, claim, stuff like that, then just hop right into the demo, and then after the demo, after getting a chance to see how this palette works, give you my review on this palette. So if you want to see all of that, then stay tuned. Okay, so that was just the box, and on the back of the box they've got some pretty and goofy pictures of Jaclyn. This is what the actual palette looks like, same front as the box, and on the back it just says Morphe and Jaclyn Hill, and I don't think you guys can see like any of this, but let me just open this up. Okay, this is what the 35 shades that you are getting looks like. And on the very top it says, this palette is dedicated to all of my loving subscribers, XO Jaclyn. Now, this palette retails for $38 for, like I said, 35 shades. And they say, this is not your average eye palette, that'd be boring. We, and most importantly, Jaclyn Hill, don't do boring. This palette is a 2-year love affair, 35 brand new OMG eyeshadows that Jaclyn whipped up, formulated, tested, retested, and perfected. They were created to deliver not only the best color payoff, but also amazing application. Mattes, shimmers, satins, foils, and glitter, all pressed to perfection just the way Jaclyn wanted. Her dreamy colors are now your new reality. So whether you're pressed for time or have time to play, this palette is your new bestie, because a girl and guy needs to have options. Okay, so let's just get right into this. There's also a card in the box that tells you the names of the shades. I'm going to have it appear here on the screen so you can see what shades I'm using. Probably should have thought of a look before this. Okay, so I'm just gonna literally jump right into this, and I'm gonna take this shade called Puder and use that as my transition shade. And then I'm gonna take this shade called Roxanne and apply that right where I applied Puder, which is a very cute name. Okay, so I've now decided that I'm going for a halo eye look, I guess. So I'm going to take this shade Central Park and start on the outer and inner corners of my eye. And then right in the middle, I'm gonna take this shade 24/7 as my middle lid color. Okay, so that is not it. I still need an inner corner color and a color on my bottom lashes and eyeliner, all that. I'm going to go ahead, finish the rest of my face, and then come back and give you my thoughts on this palette. Okay, so I went ahead and finished the rest of my face. I am using this blue color Twerk on my bottom lash line, and then I'm using this shade SBN and Obsessed on my inner corner. Now, before I get into the review, I just need to be completely honest. I had no interest in getting this palette when I first saw them, you know, talking about it. I have nothing against Morphe or Jaclyn Hill. It's just, if you follow me on Snap, then you know a while ago Morphe sent me just about every eyeshadow palette that they have. So I figured, you know, there might not be much in her palette that I can't get from any of the other palettes that they sent me. However, I ran a poll on Twitter that I said I'm pretty much considering either getting the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette or wait for Kat Von D to release her Saint and Sinners palette. But because a lot of you had, you know, mentioned the Jaclyn Hill palette, I just threw it in there. You know, I even said, like, I'm just throwing it in here because a lot of you said you wanted to see a video on it. And somehow that ended up winning my poll for which eyeshadow palette I should get. So I listened to you guys and I got the Jaclyn Hill palette. Now, getting into the actual review, I have here the palette itself, the Jaclyn Hill and Morphe palette. And then I have the ever so popular 350 palette from Morphe. This is a palette that a lot of people get if you are going to get a palette from Morphe, and for me, this is one of the few first eyeshadow palettes I owned in general, so I figured, you know, why not do a little comparison, because there are some differences between a regular palette from Morphe and what is a limited edition palette from Morphe. So just looking at the two, you can see one is bigger than the other, and that is because of the packaging. You still get 35 shades in both palettes. However, what people are used to with Morphe is this type of packaging. It's this, you know, plastic black packaging. You know, it looks a little cheap, but I feel like for traveling and stuff like that, this is, you know, it helps when traveling if you are going to travel with a Morphe palette. And when you open it up, that is what it looks like. No mirror, no nothing, all that good stuff. Now, the Jaclyn Hill palette, it's a little bit bigger because of the packaging. This is what, cardboard. It's white. It's beautiful. I love the fact that it's white. I don't even think you guys can really see it because it's not picking up that well. It's beautiful, and from what I hear, it is, you know, Jaclyn's personality to have this type of packaging. However, I've already gotten like little stains on it. It'll get dirty very quickly. Like, I was worried about my Modern Renaissance palette getting dirty. This is going to get dirty very quickly. But you open it up and there are the 35 shades. Also, no mirror in here. That's not really an issue for me, but, you know, just throwing it out there for people who like palettes that come with a mirror. So I was looking at the Jaclyn palette, and then I was looking at the 350 palette. If we could get this up. Yeah, no. And I was looking to see if there are any shades that are kind of similar so I can swatch them for you, see if there's any difference, because that is another thing I heard about this, that the formula is different, which is why, you know, that's included on why the price is more. The Morphe original palettes are $22.95, I believe. It'll be somewhere on the screen. And the Jaclyn Hill palette, like I mentioned earlier, is $38. So I found this shade and this shade, so I figured why not give it a little swatch and see how they look next to each other. So, okay, very pigmented on the back of your hand. There's one, and different finger. That's the same shade. Yeah, okay. I'm trying to find space for these two ginormous palettes. So that's the 350, and then that's the Jaclyn palette. All right, how are we gonna do this? Okay. So, is that chilly? So this is from the Jaclyn palette. This is from the 350 palette. They're pretty similar shades, and to be completely honest, the swatches are pretty similar. There's a little bit of a difference in the 350 palette. It's just literally a little bit better than the 350, but really there's not that much of a difference between those two. Let me see if there are any other shades that look similar between these two palettes. Let's see. Those kind. Let's try these two. All right, I'm running out of fingers here to swatch. So let's do that one. Probably should take the hair tie off. And I feel like those are kind of similar shades. Let's do that one from 350 palette. Okay, so this is the shade from the Jaclyn palette, and this is the shade from the 350 palette. Again, it's a little bit better with the Jaclyn palette, but you know, it's still pretty similar. Okay, so just gonna wipe those off, and then I'm gonna swatch a couple more from the Jaclyn palette. I was going to do all, but I just realized I only have one makeup remover wipe left, so yeah. Okay, so I attempted to add as many swatches as I can. This is the entire bottom row, including mattes and shimmers, and then I just threw in some other colors like the blue that I used on my bottom lash line, the purple right next to it, this orange shimmer shade, and then this shade, which is like a honey mustard type of yellow. So I tried using as many swatches on my arms, and I tried using as many swatches in this eye look, so you can kind of see how all of these shades look together. Now, how do I feel about this palette? Now, as far as blending goes, I feel like these blend beautifully. They really just kind of melt into each other when you're applying them, especially applying them on top of each other, just blending everything out. When it comes to pigment, I definitely feel like they stepped it up with the matte shades. Just comparing it to the 350 palette, the mattes in the Jaclyn palette are much better than the mattes in the 350. 350 is not horrible when it comes to the mattes, it's just they're a tad bit more chalkier compared to the Jaclyn Hill palette. But those will still blend out nicely, and they'll still give you some pigment when you apply them on. With that being said, I'm not sure if you noticed when I was applying it to my lid, but the shimmer shade that I picked for this look, I had to get in really close. We all know I can barely see as it is, but I had to get in even closer to see if it was actually applying to my lid, because I felt like nothing was coming off when I put it on, and I'm baffled by that just because, you know, I swatched other shimmer shades on my hand, I use other shimmer shades in the corner of my eyes, and I'm just thinking, is it just that one shade that is giving me an issue here? Because even when I just put it on my finger, it comes off very pigmented on my finger. It was just getting it off of my brush onto my lid was a tad bit of an issue. So I'm not sure. I would be the person who picks the hardest shimmer shade in the palette to use in the video, but other than that, the other pigments I feel were pretty similar to the other shimmers that I've seen in the other Morphe palettes. There is some fallout. I would suggest doing your eyes first, or, you know, leaving some powder so you can dust off after you do your eyes, because there is going to be fallout. There's probably still some shimmer on my eyes right now. However, with that being said, do I regret spending the 38 on this palette? No, I do not. I actually really like this palette. Honestly, I was not that mad that you guys picked this palette just because of this one shade that I didn't even use in today's video. That's this, you know, like the honey mustard shade that I put on my arm. I don't have any palette with anything close to this, so when you guys picked it, I was kind of like, yes, just because I want this. If you guys know any palette that has an actual, like, true yellow shade, that's kind of why I wanted the Saint Sinners palette, let me know in the comments down below, because I want a yellow shade. I want to do a yellow look, but I absolutely love this shade. I love that it's still a pretty neutral, you know, natural palette, which I hear is Jaclyn's go-to, but she did throw in some, you know, fun colors that you can play with, like this yellow, like the blue, like the purple, like these greens. I do like that about it. Do I feel like social media dragged it with this palette? Absolutely, and in both ways. You would have thought this palette was the second coming of Christ with how people were talking about it.
I want brush swatches, I want finger swatches, I want eyelid swatches. Well, I don't trust your review, I don't need your review, I want your review. Are you gonna review this?
Bruh.
And then the people who were putting like honest review, honest as F review. Like, if you don't just throw the video up and post it, like, don't listen to everything that you hear, because if you want to get something, you want to try something, it's, at the end of the day, it's your decision of whether or not you're going to try it. There can be 1,000 good reviews on something. If I don't want it, I'm not going to get it. There could be 1,000 bad reviews on something. if I want it, I'm gonna get it. Now, I get it that you listen to these reviews to see, you know, other people's advice on whether or not you should get things, because, you know, not everybody has like that to be spending $38 on palettes, which I'm going to get to the price. But you do have to keep in mind that things do work differently on people. Swatches can look differently just depending on the type of oil that the person produces on their fingers when they're doing the swatches. Brushes can be different when people are doing swatches. So don't take it so hard when you're looking at reviews on the internet. At the end of the day, it is your decision, and at the end of the day, as long as you're happy with your decision, it doesn't matter. If you get it and you like it, don't feel bad about the people who are saying, oh, well, you just like it because it has her name on it, because it's this brand. If you... How rude. Camera cut me off. But I was saying, don't feel bad about the people who are saying, oh, well, you're a hater, you're this, you're whatever. It's your decision. Now, this palette is $38. I said before, the other Morphe palettes are $22.95, $89, something like that. Like I said, the price will appear on the screen. Do I think that price jump, which is pretty much $16, I think, a $16 jump in price, is fair? You know, they had to throw in, I guess, a couple dollars for the different packaging. You know, they had to pay Jaclyn for this. They said there's a formula change. There's slight differences between the palettes. And it is limited edition. Do I still feel like it was worth that $16 jump in price? No, I don't. You know, could have done like, you know, 25, maybe 30. But a $38 jump in price, I mean, unless they're going to keep doing this with all the palettes that they put out there, you know, like maybe not the white packaging, you know, maybe you could do the black packaging but in this like cardboard form. Maybe, but I don't really understand the price jump there. But comparing this Morphe palette to other palettes out there like Urban Decay palettes, which will usually run you somewhere around what, $50, $60, Anastasia palettes that will reach you $40, somewhere around there, Too Faced palettes which can reach anywhere between $40 to $50, do I feel like this Jaclyn palette is priced in a fair price range compared to other brand palettes? Yes, I do. I'm not going to name any names, but there is a company out there who has palettes in the $40, $50 price range that don't have anything on this Jaclyn Hill palette. And compared to Anastasia palettes, I'm not gonna lie, Anastasia, you're getting a little bit better quality with Anastasia, but it's less than an Anastasia palette, and it's less than an Urban Decay palette. So compared to other brands, do I think, you know, like you're getting a good product for $38 with this Jaclyn Hill palette? Yes, I do. Like I said, I don't regret purchasing this. You will definitely see this in future videos of mine. And yeah, I feel like that's pretty much it. Hold up. So I went back to the website and I was looking and it says description, video, Jaclyn Says, and ingredients. I figured before that the Jaclyn Says was just, you know, like Jaclyn saying things about how long she worked on this palette and blah, 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 blah. But when you actually click on it, she actually talks about each and every single shade. So I went down to the shade that I used on my lid that I was talking about, the 24/7. And she says it's a completely different formula than the rest of the palette. So again, I would pick the shade that's completely different from the rest of the palette. And she says it's a pressed glitter baby, applied with finger or a very wet brush for a sophisticated, fresh from the runway look. I didn't apply it with my finger and I didn't use a wet brush, so maybe that is why it took a little extra oomph for me to get the color to show. But yeah, other than that, she doesn't really give any other like specific instructions on how to use the other shades, so I guess that shade really is the one shade that's different from everything else in there. And of course I would have picked it, but at least that makes sense to me now, because like I said, on my finger it came off very pigmented, so I'm assuming if I had used my finger to apply it, it would have taken a little less effort, or a wet brush. So that is it for this video. I kind of feel like doing some more swatching, so some more swatches might appear somewhere here on the screen. I hope seeing how these eyeshadows work and hearing some of my thoughts has helped in your decision whether or not you're going to try this out for yourself. Make sure to thumbs up, comment, and subscribe down below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!